Hey everybody and welcome back. Sorry I've been a little MIA recently. I've been getting ready for some exams and trying to get some certifications for my job, but now I should be through all of that and I'm excited to jump back into content creation. We're going to be looking at the 6 new heroes from the Skybound Odyssey upcoming expansion, and we're also going to be talking about the World Championship Qualifiers, my thoughts on print on demand, and the newly announced Errata to Afanas and Senka. I'll put timestamps in the description so you can jump to the topics that interest you. And with so much to talk about, let's jump into it. Looking at these heroes, the first, Isari and Pebble, is going to be for Axiom. And at noon, if you're the first player, you create a token in your landmarks. It's a permanent with when I'm sacrificed resupply. This is our first token like anything besides a character, so that's pretty cool. I feel like that this is going to be a trend where a lot of these heroes only get an effect at noon, kind of similar to Kojo and Buddha and Akishintaru. If you're the first player only, it'll activate. Definitely a bit of a balancing technique, but that does mean it needs to be about twice as strong as the heroes that activate every day, which usually give you around 111 worth of value. This one's just going to resupply if you use its own effect to sacrifice itself. So you're probably going to want to find ways to sacrifice this for additional benefit to actually like get enough value where this could be like a top tier hero. I'd say that getting the resupply for 1 mana is about like on par for a day, but since you get it half the time, you'll want to get a little bit more value out of things like Boom, which is just such a strong generic removal card that with like the free fodder has really low drawback. Or maybe this new card from the set, Farfetch, that's going to be like a hooked on a body. I feel like though this is going to be all right for trading and you will get the resupply, but one of the best benefits of hooked was drawing the card. So I still want to see some other like board based benefits for sacrificing cards that are pretty strong to really make this hero shine. Sol and Hulua is the first one we saw. This is going to be the Bravos hero. When you pass first, normally a bad thing, you'll gain a quest counter. Then if I have 3 or more quest counters, you create a Hulua token in your companion expedition. And if that token, if you have 5 or more quest counters on your hero, it's going to be gigantic. So getting 444 out of your hero power in the late game is really strong. I mean, things like Afanas and Senka and Golron can do it, and we know how powerful they are in the late game. I feel like at first I thought this hero would be pretty bad, and I mean with the current card pool it probably would be because passing first is such a downside, but now with all the support we're seeing, I really think that they're going to put the love that's needed into this hero for it to be able to shine even in the first expansion. We see cards with Rush now like this Bravos Harpooner. That's going to let you play another card immediately. And it seems like cards with Rush are going to have a benefit, taking into account that rushing is kind of like a disadvantage. So this card here, it sabotages from hand and reserve, and the 3/2/2 stats is a little better than what we usually see for a 3-cost sabotage. So it feels like this is a little bit overtuned to make up for the fact that it has Rush. And if we get more cards like this, even just like 2-cost 3/3/3 Rush or something, I can really see this strategy coming together because even though you're passing early, it's going to mean that you might have just like so much stats and things anyway that the best your opponent can do is 1/1 you. And then like in the late game, you can overwhelm them with Hulua. Even things like this Hulua in its character form here, we see the Raging Leviathan. It's a pretty strong card with a high cost, and high cost cards could do really well here because they're going to help you end your turn faster than your opponent. This one's nice with the tough, and I mean without a lot of removals for cards that cost more than 4 right now in the meta, like something like this could really shine. And I mean this card here from reserve, it says you may immediately pass if you do sabotage. Wow. If this is an effect that appears on like a common or rare, I absolutely think that Sol and Hulua could be a top tier hero. That basically completely removes the drawback of the hero because in the game you actually like don't pass immediately when you use all of your mana. You still have to have like priority come back to you again, and then you confirm and pass your turn. So you could actually like get the last action with cards like these and still pass before your opponent because they might like use all of their mana, but then it'll come to you, you'll make the last meaningful play, and then your card allows you to pass before it goes to them and they pass. And so at that point it could be like There might even be a way to play this hero where you get the last action every day, but you also still get a counter every day, and something like that would be just absolutely insane. Nadir and Bubbles, wow, this hero looks super cool. I'm definitely excited for it. I mean, one of the biggest things off the bat is this hero is the first Lyra hero that doesn't have a random component to it. It actually has a lot of, I feel like, skill that will be required because you have to be really careful about the decisions you make. You begin the game with a forest, mountain, and water terrain marker, and at noon, you may place one of my markers on target visible region. I saw a spoiler, I might like overlay it here, from Gen Con of one of these terrain markers. It actually literally looked like a normal Tumult card with one region on each side. They actually had like scissors on it where like it showed you were supposed to cut it in half. So I mean, I don't know if that'll be like the final form, but at the time it looked like a terrain marker is literally just like a Tumult card you cut in half, which only has one region that you'll literally lay on top of your Tumult cards in the middle to like show its change to that region. My first impression is there's going to need to be really good support for this hero for it to work. I mean, you don't have card advantage built into this effect. You don't have board presence built into it. And so I feel like you're going to need something special to kind of like make up for the fact that you're not getting value like a lot of the other heroes traditionally do. We can kind of see here how that might work with something like this Koi Playful Leviathan. If neither of my expeditions are in mountain, you draw a card. So I mean, at this point, like, it's a gigantic card, 3/0/3. That's basically like playing a Frog Prince on each side for 2 each. That's pretty on par. And then now, when you get the free card draw, it might almost be like, essentially at that point, if you use Nadir to put out like a water or a forest marker, it kind of might be like your hero power was draw a card, which would be a fine hero power. And so I think, yeah, if we get the right cards that can benefit from the terrain markers and summon extra tokens, get boosts, draw cards, it can definitely make up for the fact that your hero power isn't doing those things on its own. But I'm just like a little worried that some of these cards might just be generically good in the other heroes too, and so you'll just run them there where you also get an additional hero power. Maybe it'll be like a little too tricky to pull off, but I mean, you could play Koi, I assume, in like Iraq and Kibble and just drop it at the right time and still draw a card. Other cards like this Will of the Wisp and things, of course, would be good. You can just now have a little more control of the regions, but even something like this, I don't know if it'll be strong enough because like 4/4/4 in stats essentially is like what you're getting here, which is just kind of on par for a good rare. But at that point, you're not really getting additional benefit from your hero power. I mean, the other hard thing, too, is you only get to use each region type once per the whole match, and you have to use it proactively, which means, like, if your opponent just plays to the other side or something, you might have kind of, like, wasted your hero power. So, I don't know. It's going to be, like, a high-skill hero, and you're going to really need to know the right times to, like, pull the trigger to be able to get the value you need to win the game. But I'm hopeful that it will work out. Kari and Puff. This hero is kind of crazy. It actually gives your opponent a benefit. On the days that you're first, you're going to give them a 1/1/1 token, and then you're going to draw a card. That's kind of interesting because you'd almost think this would be better if it was on the days that you were second, because like when you're first, it's already hard to win, and now it's going to be even harder, but you do get the card draw. It definitely would be a buff if this hero gave them the token, I feel like maybe on the days that you were second, but honestly, maybe not, because now on the days you're second, maybe you can actually try and go for a 2-0 still. I don't know. Tell me what you think would be better in the comments. But anyway, this hero is going to give our opponents 1/1/1, which is one of the most feared powers in the game, Sigismar. Half the time, you're just giving them an extra version of Sigismar, basically. But you will be drawing cards. When you compare this to other card draw heroes like Etsadi and Traced, usually games go around 6 days only. I feel like 6 or 7 is probably the most common. And those heroes get about 3 draws, maybe 4 in a game. Kari's going to get basically the exact same, but it also has a pretty big drawback. So I am curious to see if this will be competitive. I mean, there are some good support here already. You can see on the side, like Pacify completely nullifies the token. It just gets 1/1 bigger for the extra like 1/1/1 you gave them. So yeah, if you always have like a Pacify in hand, maybe there's almost no drawback. Armored Bird's kind of similar. It's a little overstated, about like a extra 0/1/1 bigger than it should be, but it has Defender unless you have 2 or more characters facing it. If you're giving your opponent free characters, you probably will be staring down 2, so this could be pretty good there. So yeah, if we get a couple more cards like this, there could be a deck there. And I mean, card draw is one of the things that Muna has needed the most for a long time, so I'm sure this will be a breath of fresh air for a lot of Muna players. Jen and Zephyr, this character is interesting to me. It's fighting for a very similar role as Sigismar, I'd feel like, in the same faction. At noon, if you're first, you're going to get your hero expedition to ascend, which means if you're tied, you still move forward. And then when one or more of your ascended expedition moves forward, if there's no characters facing it, draw a card. So essentially this can pressure an expedition with your hero power, which is pretty similar to what we've seen with Sigismar, but it's only half the time. And I actually think that an ascended expedition is worse than a 1/1/1, because if you're tied, an extra 1/1/1 would also always break ties. But if you're behind by 1/1/1, this is doing nothing. So it's almost like this gives you a token with like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 stats. If your opponent has 0, you're ahead. If you're tied at like 2 each or something, you're ahead. But if they are ever ahead by even just 1, this hero power is doing nothing for you on that side. And I don't actually know for sure that you can win an expedition where you and your opponent both have no presence, but I am guessing that's how it'll work. So with that in mind, I think that for this to be good, you're really going to have to be drawing cards with its ability a couple times per game to kind of like make up for the other like lost value you get playing something like this instead of Sigismar. That's why I have this kind of like mystery card here, because I think that you're really going to want to run other cards that can let your expeditions ascend. At this point, you only get to ascend 1 expedition every other day. So if you have a couple more cards that can help you have ascended expeditions more often, you'll hopefully get more card draws and really get the value you need out of this hero. And I think removals will also just be so important. I mean, Tiny Jail is honestly the perfect one because you can even use it twice and it's so efficient for its cost. And if you need no cards facing you down, you'll probably want to have a couple removals to make sure that your opponent's expeditions are empty so you'll actually get those card draws. Just a quick note too, wow, I just love how they incorporate some of the themes and things we've seen in the past into these. Like we have the sticky note seals appearing here for this guy's wings and some other references and things, and all these characters just seem to fit so well into the Altered universe. Huge shout out to the team. And the last new hero is Moil and Silk. It looks like the Moth Breeder, but honestly, I feel like it might just be like the same job description, but a different character. When you play a spell with base cost 4 or more, you can exhaust it to create a Mana Moth in your hero expedition. And if the base cost was 7 or more, you also draw a card. Those are pretty expensive cards, so I don't know how much you'll be able to pull it off. It is interesting, though, that Sadi can draw cards when you play expensive things, but this would potentially draw a card and create a moth. So I feel like in the right setup, this could be pretty strong because you basically got Sadi's hero power and you've got its free token coming out as well. Sadi can draw cards as early as 5 cost, but this you could play multiple 7 cost cards, and since there's no counters or anything, they'll each draw 1. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some potential here. Base cost means the hand cost when played from hand and the reserve cost when played from reserve. So you won't be able to do anything like too cheeky where you play an expensive card from reserve where it has like a low cost. You'd actually have to pay whichever side it's on, but I'm pretty sure if a card's base cost is reduced, that you still would be able to get the effect even if you only paid like 3 for it instead of 4 from hand. This already works with things like Off You Go, which are more expensive from reserve, because the front side was already good, and now on the back side, you've almost got like a Dorothy or something when you get that free Mana Moth. And honestly, a lot of the expensive cards like Banishing Gate or any of like the 5 cost removals like Kraken's Wrath or something, now when you throw a body on them, they're looking pretty tempting. I do feel like, though, playing expensive cards hasn't been super successful ever really in the history of Altered. And I feel like there is a potential that it could be powerful, but we're really going to need to see the right support, because it does mean that your opponent's more likely than you to get the last action in, which will give them a little bit of like control and information. But I feel like as long as you can draw the game out, This hero definitely has the potential to be like a nasty control hero. I mean, if the games go long, it'll be more easy to play expensive cards anyway. And you have things like Rare Conjuring Seal that could draw 3 cards and now give you like a 2/2/2 body. Even if you lose some expeditions early on, I feel like in the late game, your resources could be so good that you could just overwhelm your opponent. I can't wait to introduce these new heroes to the fray and kind of like mix up the current meta. But so far, for each of the factions, the same hero has been the best for all 3 Altered expansions. So far, we've just seen whichever hero is like the most simple and generically good always come out on top. I think a lot of that has to do with the small card pool, and so far most of the cards in Altered are just like generic standalone cards, and so it seems natural to just slot them into whichever hero power is like generically good on its own. The only exception to this soft tier list ever was Waru and Mac in the first expansion. Equinox said he was a lot better than they expected, and I mean, they kind of took care of that, and they errated a lot of his key cards and eventually blew up the hero as well. But outside of that, these same generically good heroes have really just always held their top positions. I really hope that in future sets, we see more and more cards that support some of these unique underrepresented strategies and aren't just like so generically good on their own that you can also still run them in Kojo and Sigismar and Tasia. I think this will be especially important in Skybound Odyssey because all of the new heroes seem a little weak on paper and they're really going to need good support to work. And so yeah, I just hope that they find a way to design the cards so that they can't just be slotted into these other heroes as well. And I mean, we have seen some decent targeted support in the past, but I feel like oftentimes it seems like the design team essentially like makes synergistic cards weaker so that in combination with the hero powers, the result you get is only on par to like other generically good cards. And then that doesn't end up working out because decks like Sigismar and Kojo and Tasia and Afanas can just run those generically good cards and get the same value as what the other decks are getting with their hero power, plus now they also get a token or a boost or whatever for free as well. Here are some good examples of this. I mean, if you look at like pretty much every support for Sierra ever, pretty much all of the permanents for her are weaker than what we see in other factions. And that's kind of making up for the fact that she's going to summon a token. I mean, imagine if like Sierra had Ortis Carrier. I feel like that would be insanely powerful, but instead all of her permanents have to be a little weaker because they know that it's also going to summon a Brass Bug. But I mean, if you look at things like this example here with Bug Out Bag, from reserve, both of these cards cost 2. They're both rare, and they both resupply, but Sigismar's is going to create a token for free on its own, and Sierra's now only creates a token because of the hero power triggering. And so at that point, between the hero power and the synergistic card, you only get the same power as what you'd expect from like a normal card. But for a deck like Sierra to be good, it's going to need to get an additional around 1/1/1 worth of value on top of what the card should do before like the hero power is worth it. And I mean, another example here, let's look at the main character for Afanas and Senka and Rin and Orchid. For Afanas, I mean, it fits perfectly into the hero. And then this card standalone can boost itself, only costs 2 from hand, 1 from reserve, and it has the potential to draw both times. Now Persephone, your main goal is like in tandem with your hero power. If things work out, you'll be able to draw a card, but you're having to pay an extra 1 from hand and reserve. And I mean, in comparison to like the Mage Dancer or other strong cards, you're actually taking a hit to the stats as well. So I feel like in order to activate your hero power synergy here, you're playing like an understated card. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see what they're going for here, but it just feels like even when things work out, you needed like your hero power and this card to just do like not even what Mage Dancer could do on its own. And then you would still have free boost from Afanas like on top of that as well. But yeah, one way or another, there needs to be some cards for these heroes like Rin and Orchid that are actually just good on their own, and then you can still get the hero power as an additional benefit on top of that. And lastly, I mean, this is like one of the most classic examples, I feel like. You have the Bravos Pathfinder, and I mean, this could be the Ortis Frog Prince as well. For 2 from hand and reserve, you get a 0/3/3, and then now you look at Lyra, and I mean, you have the Snowman. It's a 0/3/3, but if you're not in water, it's going to gain fleeting. Alternatively, you could also pull up something like Lyra Scald, which is just a 3/0/2 for the same cost. I mean, technically, if you're playing Festival, maybe you'd want to gain fleeting, but in all other scenarios, this has a drawback for no reason. I get that Lyra wants to have cards with zeros, and you might think of it as a benefit, but summoning a free Buddha or all these other things that the other good heroes do is also a benefit, and their cards don't have a drawback. I think that synergistic strategies should be able to have a payoff because they're often harder to pull off, so when it works, it should be pretty strong. And I mean, if you're going to trigger a Rack and Kibble consistently, you can probably get it around like 3 times a game, but at that point, you must be running a lot of low-cost characters, so you're often just going to get like 2 worth of value off the top. Arak's always just kind of been a bottom 6 hero, and I really just hope that someday we can get more support for it that's just on par with the other heroes, and I really don't think it's going to break the meta. We've kind of seen this happen once for Golring and Toxin. This was another bottom 6 hero, but with the support that we saw from Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze, I feel like now it might even be like a top hero. I feel like this is a perfect example where we got very targeted support that only really works with this strategy, keying into certain things like Defender and being behind, which happens with this hero and not the others. So you can't just slot these cards into the other heroes, but in combination with Golrong's hero power, you actually can create a little bit of above average value, which is what you need for a competitive deck. I think the main thing holding this back though is, man, this deck just wants to go into time and things, which is so bad for competitions. And also, it feels like there was a little bit of a disconnect between Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze, where one of the strategies wants to ignore Defender and like move forward early, and the other just wants the game to go as long as possible. Maybe if it was a little more cohesive, it'd be able to do even better. But either way, I just love how this hero is able to get the support it needed. And I really hope we see that for some of the new heroes and the older heroes moving forward. But talking about heroes that have gotten all the support they need, wow, Afanas and Senka has been doing so well for so long, and it was time for an Errata. Now, spells you play with hand cost 1 or less are fleeting, and everything else stays the same. Let's take a look at the stats and see if this was merited. Looking at the top 36 decks from the France World Championship Qualifier with around 600 players, and the 2 other World Championship Qualifiers that had around 100 players each, we're going to look at their top 16 decks. Altogether here we see that Afanas took around 1/3 of the meta share, and I mean, Sigismar is still taking a lot as well right behind it, but still strong showings from Kojo and Traced, and a lot of diversity, honestly, in the lower bands as well. When we look at the decks that actually qualified for the World Championship, we see 3 Afanas, 1 Sigismar, 1 Traced, and a Nevenka. This isn't a tier 0 format or anything. I feel like, in like tier 0 formats, you'll often see like 2/3, 3/4 of the meta is like one deck. But honestly, I feel like this is pretty diverse. And even for like metas for Altered in the past year, this isn't bad at all. But Afanas does clearly have the largest representation. And I think like what's not really shown here is there are a lot of decks that are specifically countered by Afanas that can't really handle all of his removal and after use and things that are just pushed out of the meta. So while there is a pretty good spread at the very top, I think that there's going to be a lot of more room in like the A and B tier decks for different heroes to shine now that he's going to be tuned down a bit. If we compare this to Waru, man, back in the day, I made this chart around when he was doing really well in the first expansion after like the Gamers Guild and some of those tournaments. And wow, he had like a 60% share or more back then in the top cuts, which is about 1.5 times what Afanas has. So honestly, this is probably the best comparison we have. I mean, these are going to be the only 2 heroes to receive an Errata, and probably just 2 of the most dominant decks we've seen. For Waru and some of his key cards like Robin Hood, we've seen some of the harshest Errata ever. And I mean, that hero's gone from a top 1 to a bottom 1 hero. So do I think we're going to see the same treatment for Afanas? Honestly, short answer is yes and no, but let's look a little bit closer into it. For Waru, we saw Robin Hood, Ozma, and Baba Yaga become completely unplayable, all cards that were really good for him at different stages of his life. And we also saw his token just completely removed as like a consequence as well of not being able to pick to sleep your cards. Essentially, every bureaucrat in the deck as well received a nerf because now these cards weren't able to do all of the things that they used to do either, since you couldn't play them awake to help you win expeditions in key moments, or like now on the last day, every single bureaucrat in your deck is just a dead draw. I mean, Frog Prince is the most brutal example because now it's just worse than Night Warden in every way in bureaucrat decks. So what? I mean, like half to 2/3 of the warrior deck got nerfed. I mean, no wonder it's not performing And I mean, almost just as bad of a nerf is all the new removal that's been introduced. A lot of these cards can just straight up discard your sleeping characters, and they can remove things like Quetzalcoatl very favorably. I mean, Requiem was just like the last nail in the coffin. This can literally remove a 4-cost sleeping bureaucrat twice, discarding him both times, and it only costs 2 and then 3. If Warhu was ever going to be good again, people would just start playing this and he'd drop right out of the meta. I feel like Equinox has made sure that he's going to stay dead. I really hope that's not true in the future, and I mean, I kind of hope that they reconsider making their errata final. I know that it makes the most sense to make a change once and then stick to it, but in literally every other game I've ever played, if they nerf cards or add them to like a ban list, after like a year or so, it's very, very often, more often than not, that like a lot of those cards get to come back. And I mean, in digital games, oftentimes they can buff cards multiple times to get the perfect balance, or they like bring back cards to their original power when other heroes get buffs and new cards in future sets. Yeah, I think personally, I'm just a little worried about the erratas being final. All of these removals are honestly just as much of a nerf to Afanas as they are to Waru. They've made it so that he can't play a lot of his strong at dusk bounce cards and anchored characters and things anymore because they just trade so well into them. So now you're switching to like different uniques with on play effects. Also now, I mean, with the change to Afanas, it's going to be really hard to run your really powerful 1-cost stars. I mean, Joyride and Sleight of Hand that you used to trigger Nilam, now that they don't even go to the reserve, that synergy is just completely gone. And Rhyme Frost is just worse value now that you only get it once from hand. Magical Training was like the main card in the deck, and now you can only get it once as well. I guess you can just slot in the common, so I think like it'll still see play in that form, but it's still a huge nerf. And Beauty Sleep, you'll probably still have to run, but you're not going to be able to use it to take out 2 threats on the last day. I think the 3 cards on the left are going to see no play, and you'll probably run some version of the cards on the right still, but they'll definitely be weaker. One of the biggest strengths of Afanas was being able to bounce your key cards back to hand, and a lot of these are just not going to be available for that anymore. Here's an example of a unique that, yeah, you would have been able to combo with those before, but that's not going to work anymore. And even things like Mage Dancer or just actually Afanas itself are going to be gaining less boost and giving less boost because you're not going to be playing as many cards in a day now that you don't have your 1-cost cards. Also, I think Nilam, which has become kind of like the face of Afanas, is probably unplayable now because a lot of your best triggers were 1-cost cards. It's going to be a lot harder to 2-0 in the late game and make up for the slow start where you set this up. Similarly, I really don't think we can justify running Conjuring Seal anymore because without Nilam's bugs and all the 1-cost combos in the late game, it's going to be really hard to 2-0 consistently and make up for lost expeditions early on. Additionally, if you're not playing a bunch of cheap cards, you maybe don't even need as many resources to still have a full hand. So I mean, after going through that, it feels like the Afanas deck is going to be completely rehauled. But I think the one like ray of hope for Afanas over Waru is that like while Waru will never get his token again and his characters always have to be played asleep, for Afanas, if you just cut the 1-cost cards, his new drawback might as well not even exist, and he'll still be giving multiple boosts a day in the late game and things like normal. I was trying to mess around with the deck though, and with so many of the key cards removed, I mean, it really is a shell of what it was before. I saw some people saying that the nerf is like a light nerf, but I really think that it's going to be a big change and going to be kind of shocking to the Afanas players. We'll probably have to run something like Baba Yaga again for card advantage now that we lost some of the other options, and because it's going to be more important to go 1-1 on the early days. I'm not even sure about like Spindle Harvesters and some of these other cards. I do think that anchored characters could be good because we'll need some way to kind of like build advantage and overwhelm our opponent to get 2-0s in the mid game. But with less boost from less spells being played, maybe the Spindle Harvesters will be like a little too weak. I want to try out some things like Pacify, and maybe something like Conscription could be good. Now that we have less 1-drops, we'll need more strong 2-drops, and maybe even you could run the Nilam if you're running that. I was wondering about Meditation Training. It's always been kind of weak because it's a little bit of a liability if they have removal, but you might have to take risks like that now since your hero isn't just like so consistently good. You might need to get a little lucky and like anchor something big to be able to 2-0 on the next day. but not 100% sure. And honestly, maybe something like field reinforcements could be okay. If your 1-cost spells are gaining fleeting, I guess you might as well run a 2-cost that does as well. And I mean, if we aren't running Nilom, which was just blatantly better than Nilom Spires, maybe there's a reason to try that one. I don't know if it's going to be good enough because it'll take a while to get online. But if you were getting the bug every other day, that could be helpful in the late game to maybe allow a 2-0 at some point. I'm pretty sure we're still running at least one Beauty Sleep and slotting in the common magical trainings. But yeah, I don't know if any of the other 1-costs are worth it anymore. I switched over the Mage Dancer to common here so that I could try more rares. Maybe you'd bring it back, but it might be a little harder to get 3 boosts without as many 1-drops. Let me know in the comments what you think about the change to Afanas in this list. Do you think there's hope for him? I definitely don't think he's completely out of the game, but I feel like he's going to land a little closer to like Basira and some of those just okay tier heroes. But this change isn't active yet, and for me, I'm still going to be playing under the old format at the Dallas World Championship Qualifier. I'm getting ready for the event right now, and I'm super excited. And honestly, one of the big things that I've had to deal with when preparing for it is the print-on-demand system, so I just want to like touch on that a little bit now. First of all, I mean the good things. You literally can buy digital cards now and then like pay to have them printed, and then they show up at your house and you can use them. I mean, that feature is just amazing in itself. And even though there have been some hiccups, I feel like Equinox has been pretty accommodating. For the most recent orders that got delayed, it seems like they've shipped them pretty fast and that all of them should be arriving before the events. And for other events like Essen, where there weren't convenient print-on-demand slots, the tournaments have allowed players to use proxy uniques if you own the digital. So I think it is good that Equinox has been pretty accommodating, but I feel like there's definitely been a little bit of pain with the print-on-demand systems and some things that I hope improve. I know that there are a lot of expenses associated with having a system like this and that maybe some of the things aren't going to be able to change easily, but I still think they're fair to mention and just like admit that even if some of these things can't change, it is just like a little unfortunate, or it will be hard on some players. Especially after having multiple of my own experiences with print on demand, I really do hope that we see some improvements to the experience in the future. It's really tough right now. It feels like you often have to wait around like a month between print slots, which is tough because if you're playing this game all the time, I feel like a lot of times you just wish your cards, especially your uniques, could show up sooner. I know in like the tumult for Trial by Frost, I wasn't able to get the uniques I wanted, so I just kind of had to play like random decks. And so it is a little hard when it's kind of like inflexible to have the cards show up when you want. Also, the size of the orders is just really tricky for me. I mean, for now, you have to have minimum 20 cards, which is $20. And then for like me in the US, I have to pay shipping of around $17 an order. So it's like at minimum, I have to pay like $37 if I want to get one card, which really sucks if I like put it in an order and then like next week I buy a new unique card. It's like, wow, I guess I'll just not print this. And I mean, it's totally fair that it's hard to adjust the scale on this with the resources of the company, but it would just be so nice if there was even like a feature where you could just pay like $5 for the card and like $5 for the cheapest shipping to get like one card. Even though it's like worse value, it's just tough for me that like the minimum I have to pay is $37. And I think one of the other hardest parts is that often orders now have been delayed, or they're like so far out that things change before the order is completed. And it's really tough because there's no way to edit your order. So there have been times where I've had multiple print-on-demand orders for the same slot that show up at the same time, and I had to pay the $17 shipping for both of them. And in some situations, maybe you could avoid that if you wait longer to put your order in last minute. But there have been times where print slots filled up completely, and so if players did that, they might be getting bumped to a future slot, so I can definitely see people wanting to get those orders in early. And also, sometimes orders are pushed back outside of your control by Equinox, at which point, maybe now that you're going to have to wait a couple extra weeks for your cards, you're going to want to add something else to the order, or maybe you don't even need the cards anymore and you can't change it. I think that's especially tough when people have like seen their cards get errated or nerfed, and then their print-on-demand order is still printed a few weeks later, and then they like show up and it's like, wow, I don't even want these cards, but I couldn't do anything about it. It would be awesome if someday they can figure out a way to let you edit orders if it's like maybe even like up to like 5 days in advance or something, especially when people now sometimes put in orders weeks in advance. I'd really love it if I could just like go remove one of the random common cards that I had in there to add that new unique or something instead of having to make a new order. And it's tough, like the price of the packs does feel a little high to me. I mean, I understand it on this small scale, but when you're getting up into orders that are like hundreds of dollars, I really feel like there should be a bigger cut. It just makes me only really want to use non-foil cards because I can get all of my commons and rares for so cheap from like my displays, especially at like local stores. Oftentimes they're like discounted to like half price, but then I have to pay $1 for my foil commons and rares, and it's especially tough when it's like the foilers you pull from your packs feel like you should be getting some benefit, but then I'm having to pay hundreds of dollars to like get these like commons and rares and foil, and so it's like I'm like spending money to get like the perk I earned. It's probably just how it's gonna be, but I think the result for me and a lot of people is I just don't think a lot of us are gonna be foiling most of our commons and rares ever, which I would love to do if it was a little more affordable. And I mean, we're definitely just all waiting out for the time when they're gonna announce what the compensation is we're gonna receive for the errated cards that we've had in the past, because I mean, I've been paying money to print versions of my cards that have been changed and things, and I'm not sure what they're going to announce in the future for that. And similarly, I printed a whole order of foil heroes, and they showed up and they were all misprinted, and then the like compensation I received was that they were unlocked in my account so that I could print them again. But it's like, dang, I just paid $20 and the cards all got messed up. And it's like, I don't even want to pay again to have them all printed another time. So yeah, I mean, things like that are just definitely tough because it kind of just feels like you lose out a little bit as the buyer, and it's just like a risk of using the system. And like some of my foils and things have showed up like off center or with scratches, and I guess that's just how it is. I'm really not going to pay $37 to reprint like the one that got messed up. And I mean, just one of the biggest inconveniences of the print on demand system that I really hope they change soon is alternate art unique cards from the first set are just so hard to use, because if you print them once, you're not able to trade them to a friend for a year. You can't sell them for a year. And it's just so frustrating because it's like, wow, if I go to an event in January and I buy a unique card for 250 euros online, I use it for my event. Now I'm just stuck with it for a whole year and I can't sell it. I can't even sell the physical copy that I own to someone and transfer them the digital because it's like locked to my account. And I feel like also like one of the only ways you can really consistently have good uniques is if you share with your friends. But at this point, you can't even like share the card that you've printed with them, even though you could like, I can give it to them at the store, but like technically they wouldn't be able to play it because it's not in their account and things. It'd be really nice if they could, I don't know, find some way to let you transfer those rights to somebody, even though it can't be printed for a year. And I mean, I don't think anyone cares at this point about the alternate arts. You can find them for cheap online if you just want a picture of it. So they really didn't retain their value, and I think it's mostly just causing trouble for the players. Overall, I have to be like, print on demand is a good thing for a game. I'm glad we have this feature. It's like necessary for the game to work. But honestly, if I was trying to convince a friend playing another game to switch to Altered, this is not one of the features I would want to share with them. After spending hundreds of dollars on multiple print-on-demand orders, I haven't been super impressed with it, honestly. But yeah, let me know in the comments your experiences with print-on-demand. And I definitely don't want to end on a low note because things aren't all negative. I'm so excited for the World Championship Qualifier. I think it's amazing that players can literally compete in local events and win a trip to France to compete in the World Championship. I hope to be there. Wish me luck in the comments and let me know if I can expect to see you at Dallas. Subscribe to my channel and watch out for my report from that. And if you made it this far, make sure to leave a like, and thanks for watching.